Hi, JaMarr. Welcome to the Work Well podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. Now, there's something very strange about you. Apart from a really cool, fantastic name, you're an entrepremedian. What's that mean?
That's affirmative. Well, if you know anything about entrepreneurship and you know anything about stand up comedians, you know that they're very creative. And by the very nature of the trade, you have to be entrepreneurial. So in about 2009, while I was attending Naval Postgraduate School and moonlighting as a comedian for about 4 years at that point, I had the good fortune of meeting Dave Chappelle. And it was a random OkCupid date, and I was in Oakland, California. And that night, Dave Chappelle read my comedy business card on stage. And he said it was the most hilarious business card that he had ever seen in his life. And it was at that moment that I realized the synergy between being a comedian and being an entrepreneur. The only difference is an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur who happens to be extremely funny. He uses his humor as a tool to super connect with people, develop business, and enjoy the journey that is entrepreneurship, which is a wild journey.
I can guess. So you're not just an entrepreneur, but you're also a marketer and a public speaker as well. Tell me where this whole journey started.
Well, I started speaking in high school, and at the age of 18, I had the good fortune of being selected as one of three students that had the opportunity to speak at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City for a nonprofit called Facing History in Ourselves. Now, it was at this moment that I was in the company of Kofi Annan, Rudy Cruz, and a bunch of other dignitaries that people really noticed the gift that I had as a communicator. And at the end of that night, not only did I get a chance to take a picture with Kofi Annan, who at the time was head of the United Nations, but I was handed dozens of business cards with people requesting that I consider interning with them during my senior year and even after my high school career. But I put that to the side because I already had plans to go join the military. And I joined the military for about a year and a half before getting an academic scholarship to go to college. I went to Auburn University in Alabama. And it was in that first semester, I was taking Marketing 101. And I'll never forget this. I had a professor named Mr. Stephen Rotfeld. And Stephen asked me to come to his office hours after the first exam. Not because I aced it. I got about an 89. So just shy of an A. And he said, hey, listen, JaMarr, I don't want you to take this the wrong way. But I would really love to know how you managed to do so well on my exam. And I never see you taking any notes. And I laughed out loud for a number of reasons. Number one, I thought it was a compliment, and I didn't take it as a slight in any way because he was recognizing that I had something about me. And I laughed, and I went into my backpack, and I pulled out a tape recorder. I said, Professor Rodfeld, I find your class so interesting, and I find you hilarious that I record the class, and I listen to your lectures multiple times. In fact, I don't even bother reading the book, and that's how I passed your exam. And he was taken aback. And it was in that moment where I realized that one of my superpowers was learning through listening. You know, everybody learns differently. Visual, audio, kinesthetic. I am a very strong auditory learner. And so that's where my love affair with marketing came in. It was between marketing and psychology, but I went the practical route and got a degree in accounting. But by my senior year, I wanted to blow my brains out. I was like, yeah, accounting is not what I want to do. I'm more of a people person. I love communicating, but I already had a job lined up, which was to join the military. But it was in that first year in the military that I discovered stand-up comedy for the first time live. And I made the super connection in my brain between being a public speaker and being a comedian. See, a comedian is a public speaker. They just have a higher duty and responsibility to make sure there's more levity in their communication. So that, to me, they're the highest level because it's the highest degree of difficulty. However, if you slow it down and you deliver laughs, but you deliver more information, actionable information in an entertaining way, you actually become an elite public speaker. And we all know that the world pays them very well. I'm pretty sure some of your favorite speakers make anywhere between $50,000 to $100,000 a year. Now, I'm not there yet with my fees, but I have taken home some pretty nice fees for showing up for an hour to motivate and inspire and sometimes make people laugh.
That's great. Now, You have a tagline: truth, love, and comedy. How do you merge all three of those together?
Well, I've been studying stand-up comedy now for 19 straight years. I've worked with some of the best coaches and teachers in the industry. And when I look at my favorite comedians, the George Carlins of the world, the Richard Pryors of the world, even, the Bill Cosbys of the world, they told stories, and oftentimes it was based in a lot of truth. Now, at the end of the day, you never want to say things in malice when your goal is to make people laugh. So you got to have love layered into some of these hard truths that you're telling. And at the end of the day, you got to sprinkle in some comedy, right? Brevity is levity. So for me, truth, love, and comedy, which also translates into TLC, right? Tender love and care, is something that I think everybody needs in their life. If no one's ever telling you the truth, then you're going to fail in life, because the truth might hurt, but it's necessary to make adjustments in life. We all absolutely need love. It's a part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And to me, comedy is the ultimate, connection tool, alleviate stress. To me, it's the best medicine, except you don't have to have a degree in order to deliver it. And there are no side effects except, maybe the giggles, a sore jaw every once in a while, but new friends.
You're right. We remember everything through story. And since the beginning of time, we've had stories. So
Yep.
with today's age, it's digital, it's online, everything's going to be online very soon. But there's this growing need to create a personal brand. What would your tips be for people that are just starting out? They're just starting to build a personal brand. How do they incorporate story themselves and get that public following they really, really want?
Sure. Well, everybody has to start from someplace. And oftentimes we look at people who have extremely large personal brands and we compare ourselves. Comparison is the thief of joy. I'm sure you've probably heard that quote before. So what I would tell people is start with what you know. What are you passionate about? Because if you first decide, this is what I know, this is what I'm passionate about, all you have to do is begin to talk about that thing in relation to you, because that's what makes it unique. You see, there are a lot of things. There are a lot of speakers, there are a lot of marketers, there are a lot of comedians, but there are not a lot of people who combine all three of those into one vehicle. That's what makes me a unique entity. My goal with being an entrepremedian is, one, it's a kind of a weird, wonky, difficult word to say, but that's for a reason, because I want to stand out. I don't want to be like everyone else. So first, be yourself. Genetically, we're all 99.99% the same, but there's a zero point zero 0.01 difference between each and every single human being on this earth. So throw your 0.01% into the universe in relation to everything around you, and through your filter, tell your story. Now, of course, video is going to be the way that you want to get good at that. And that just takes practice. That takes getting on the camera. That takes starting from nothing and going forward. Now, you can decide to do it completely on your own and take as much time as you need. What's the rush? But if you want to go faster, if you want to get to a place sooner, then leverage mentors, leverage coaches, people who have mastered the art, who've spent $10,000, $20,000 practicing the art of communication, both in person and on camera, because there is a difference. But think about the things that you struggle with, right? Your vulnerability when you're telling your story is your greatest superpower, because what you realize is when you share your vulnerable traits and situations with people, people raise their hand and go, wow, me too. You learn that you're not alone in this world. In fact, because of the internet, in my mind, this is the way to find your tribe. But you don't find your tribe by sitting in the corner and hiding. You only find them by taking a step forward, taking a risk, taking a leap. Instead of looking at exactly what everyone else is doing, share your unique path. I heard this really great keynote the other day, and the name of the keynote was F You, Jack. And it was by a guy who is, by all senses of the imagination, just a creator. He did music, he did theater, but he's most known for owning a company that helps creators generate reoccurring revenue every month. And that platform is called Patreon. Now, on this platform, Jack basically a musician who wanted to just find a way to pursue his arts and all of his creative desires, built a platform to solve a problem for him. And when it launched, it was just him, his wife, who was also a musician, and his roommate. Him and his wife lives with a roommate, and that's what they started Patreon. It's generated over $5 billion for creators around the world because he was solving a problem for him, because he was looking at his own pain, his own suffering, and he wanted to just create, create, create. And so when you want to tell your story, try not to hide behind any parts of it. Reveal it all. One of my favorite artists, Childish Gambino, aka Donald Glover, says when he went to camp, he told this one girl some truths. He thought she would keep them between him and her, but she didn't. She shared them with other people, and those other people tried to laugh at him, tried to make him feel bad about his truths. So he learned a lesson that day. He said, if I tell everybody everything, then nothing's a secret, and no one can ever make me feel bad for the things that I've been through. That is the easiest way you can build your brand. I'm not going to say it's easy. It's scary. But if you put vulnerability out there in the world, people will be picking up what you put down, and they'll be impressed by the courage it takes to do so. And that is how you get closer to finding your tribe sooner rather than later.
I've got to be honest with you. I'm one of those people that absolutely hates being in front of the camera. It's my worst nightmare. And I know that you have this tip that you give people that are like me, terrified of the camera. What is it?
Well, honestly, there's a lot of tips. I literally have a little book of tips that I've created called the 21 Toolkit. So if I were to just pick one, what I would say is, first of all, think about the one person that you would like to serve or help in some way with what you now know because of the journey you've been on, right? If you want to serve somebody, what happens is you take the focus off of yourself, off of your insecurities, off of how do I look, how do I sound, and you say to yourself, you know what? I want to help one person today. I don't know who needs to hear this, but this is something that I went through. This is how it made me feel. This is where I wanted to go. This is what I did to get there, right? The who, what, when, where, why, and how of that scenario will for sure help a person. And whether it helps the person who watches it can't necessarily relate to it, but they know someone who can, and so they decide to just click the share button and now make sure that that gets into the hands of the person who needs it. That is what you're denying when you think about how much you hate something. Because I will tell you this, once you get down the road and really kick that can far, the pain of that initial starting point, it'll be long forgotten. The joy from all of the people that you've helped who reach out to privately and in secret in the DMs, they slide in and they say, hey, thank you for that. I thought I was the only one, but you made me not feel alone. That feeling of that win to me is worth all of the pain it takes to get that initial, what I call breakthrough velocity. So think of the one person that you can help and serve with your message. Take the focus off yourself and see how far that takes you, because that is a go-giving spirit.
That's great advice, especially for people like me. So let's move this from an entrepreneurial perspective into the corporate workplace. Now, corporate workplaces can be the dullest, most boring, soul-destroying places on the earth, and you have to spend the majority of your waking life there. So how can we take humor into the workplace and make life just a little bit more worth living?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's really unfortunate that for a lot of people, they believe the statement you just made to be 100% true with no way out, and they feel trapped. But the good news is, studies have shown that humor in the workplace, done appropriately, done under the right, umbrella of support, increases both the enjoyment factor of employees, helps them feel more cohesive, helps them develop friends, and fosters an environment of fearlessness in taking risks and people being vulnerable about ideas and creativity to solve problems. Now, in those types of environments, a humor filled environment at the workplace, it actually also shows that people are less likely to make long-term mistakes because they held what they were doing to themselves for fear of judgment. You see, when people laugh together, there's something that actually happens in their brains where oxytocin is released and they feel in closer proximity emotionally to one another. And that emotional connection is going to foster people being more willing to ask for help, to give suggestions. And so if you are a manager, if you are an employer, a CEO, a founder, think about the type of environment that you want to have. Do you want to foster a cutthroat environment or a cohesive, collective, communicative, humorous-based environment? And once you decide what is right for you, then you can start to facilitate that. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to become stand-up comedians or improvise actors, but practicing some of these things before meetings will go a long way in helping the communication level raise, but also the safety, and it'll lower that vigilance that people have that they can't trust one another because they can be vulnerable. Now, one of my old comedy coaches, he actually went in and did trainings with a company, a communications company, and that company over the course of a 10-year period had an 8-figure exit because of the increased performance of multiple aspects of their team, who are mostly client facing, but also internally. They just worked a lot better together. And so if you want to, I would highly recommend, hiring professionals, hiring improv groups, hiring comedy coaches, hiring, communication coaches that have a humorous style and aspect to what they do, and bringing them in. And that way your team can get educated and have some sort of continual education process where maybe once a month you do something virtually, you train, you work, you write, you practice. That skill set translates into a lot of other areas because ultimately human creativity is the thing that sets us apart. AI is here, but right now does not do a good job of finding ways to laugh about sometimes difficult things. And so create an environment that fosters creativity, that fosters people willing to take chances, but learning how to do it tastefully and tactfully is what I'd recommend.
Great advice again. So I like to think of life as a social stage, and we're all social actors on the stage. And at any particular time, we're called in to be a specific actor, such as an entrepreneur or a comedian or a CEO or an employee. What 5 tips would you give somebody that's looking to develop themselves, either as a personal brand or within the workplace, in terms of public speaking and speaking up for themselves and just speaking out?
Sure. Well, 5 tips to be either a better communicator at the workplace or a leader as an entrepreneur. Communication, they call it a soft skill, but to me, it's the hardest skill that you can have. And I mean hard in a double entendre type of way. Hard meaning in the hip hop community, when you go hard at something, you go all in. So you have to make a decision. Is this a skill that I want to actually see the dial move and improve upon? Of course, I always recommend starting at some place like Toastmasters. That's a nice little basic way to just get familiar, get comfortable. But once you get your sea legs, once you can stand in front of the room and not feel like the walls are turning black and closing in on you, then there's some additional steps that you're going to have to take. One, I would recommend, like what you're doing right now, you're podcasting, but go be a guest on podcasts, because now you've got to answer open-ended questions that you don't know where they're going to come from. So that's good cross training for public speaking. Now, especially if you're going to be, on camera, now you got to think about your body, your posture, your movements, your hand movements, your gestures, any idiosyncrasies. Then I would also recommend, whenever you speak, always, always, always record yourself. Record yourself and watch back the game tape. The same way athletes, whether you're playing football, soccer, baseball, basketball, hockey, you always go back and review your performance. Look at yourself. Watch it with the sound on, watch it with the sound off, and then ask yourself, what things can you improve? Your ability to be self-aware of your own abilities is probably one of the biggest skill sets that you have to learn to get calibrated. From there, I would recommend, watching as many talks as you can, right? We learn by watching other people and then attempting, right? And then tweaking. And then, of course, lastly, I would highly recommend a coach. A coach's job is not to walk the walk for you. but to assist you in your mindset and your thinking, to pick you up when you feel down, to push you when they know there's more that you can go, and to really teach you actionable tools and skill sets to use and try on a regular basis. Now, the 21 tools that I teach when I coach someone on speaking, all 21 of those tools don't have to be executed at one time. Oftentimes, when I'm giving a 45-minute keynote, I might use 3 of those tools over a 45-minute period to help me bookend all of the sections of those talks. So oftentimes, like you said, people learn through stories. They're easy to remember because people can visualize what's happening. But I also like to leave people with something I call a memory hook. And that's going to be an acronym like truth, love, and comedy I mentioned earlier, like LDT, learn, do, teach. If you want to master something, doing it is not just enough, right? You learn how to do it, you do it, but teaching it forward helps you to learn it inside and out from other people's perspectives. So that gives you a holistic outlook on how to accomplish that thing, not just for yourself, but to help others do it as well.
Great. So you're a great talker. You're a great public speaker. And
Well, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. You also mentioned hip hop just there. Now, obviously, you've got a background in hip hop and you've got a story to tell. I wonder whether you'd share your hip hop story.
Well, sure. I mean, I grew up in New York City, in the Bronx to be precise, where hip hop was created, right? That was where it was originated. Now, hip hop isn't just the verbal aspect of it, it's also dance, it's also graffitiing, it's also emceeing, and it's also DJing. So there's all these elements combined. And at one point, I really did dabble in all of those elements, right? Whether it be graffitiing on the side of the buildings, expressing myself through my artwork, whether it be dancing, obviously there's making music, but emceeing is different from simply rapping or rhyming. Emceeing is feeling the vibrations of the room that you are orchestrating and being the glue that connects the elements, that introduces people, that raises the vibration, that sees when the energy goes down and decides to pick it up, that sees when the energy is too loud and decides to simmer it down. So emceeing, also known as the master of ceremonies, emceeing is a little bit different from also like rapping and rhyming. But when you learn how to leverage something like poetry and spoken word, which translates very nicely into rapping and rhyming, when you learn those things, it gives you a natural ability to find words quickly in your mind and to flow off of the dome and deliver words that hit like a metronome or the tick tock of a click clock. You see what I'm saying? Like I can just play and flow with that. But when you learn to be in a flow state like that, with a faster rhythm, it makes speaking that much easier. It makes the ability for you to go into a sentence and then give a pregnant pause so that people, what happened? What's going? And then they shift, they lean in. It allows you what I like to call the showmanship or the show personship, right? So that you can deliver a talk in a way that's memorable and is actionable. And so to me, hip hop, it was one of those things that allowed me to hear other people's stories, to learn wisdom. And then the repetitive nature of it creates the opportunity where you listen to it again and again, and it reinforces what you're trying to learn, which is why I'm very careful about the type of hip hop that I listen to today, because you are programming your mind when you listen to something over and over and over again. And so the type of music that I make tends to be of a more positive variety and a reinforcing variety in the personal development realm, like the song that I have, which is called Super Connecting, to help people understand the things I'm trying to teach them about business development, networking, communication, using acronyms like FORM, family, occupation, recreation, and motivation when you're out networking. Oftentimes people get to the form, they get to the F, the O, and the R pretty easily, right? Tell me about your family, where you're from, right? They talk about your occupation, what do you do for a living? They talk about recreation, what do you do for fun? But how often do people ask you, hey, what's your purpose in life? What motivates you to get up every day besides just earning a living? What's the deeper meaning? And when you can go a little bit deeper in your questions with people, that is how you form a super connection, one that, I have some people that I don't talk to for months or years, but whenever we reconnect, it's like we're long lost friends and we pick up right where we left off because we're at a deeper depth than most acquaintances.
I think that's amazing. Life is about making those super connections, not with people just in your own family and friends, your own environment, but globally.
Yep.
Because, like say, we need to pay it forward. So where can we find you? Where can we get hold of you?
So obviously, you can find me very easily on LinkedIn, JaMarr Johnson. On Instagram and Twitter, I'm JaMarr J. That's JaMarr with 2 R's, like a pirate, JaMarr J. And then, I've done tons of podcasts. You can find me on podcasts talking about various subjects. And then, of course, you can go to my website. IamJaMarr.com. IamJaMarr.com is like my central hub for everything that I do, from speaking to comedy to marketing to coaching, to helping people develop sponsorship deals for their brands, helping nonprofits raise money. Essentially, what I realized about entrepreneurship is that it allows you to design your life with everything you want, and you can get rid of anything you don't by offloading it and hiring someone else to do it for you.
Yeah, that's the great thing about being an entrepreneur. Well, thanks so much for being with us today. I hope that people take a lot away from this talk.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Isabella.
You're welcome. See you soon.
See you.